She said it with a smile, playful, dangerous, and soft enough to break me. Don't tell your friend you like me better. It started out as nothing special, just a quiet dinner at my best friend's place after weeks of promising we'd catch up. He said his aunt was visiting and insisted I come. I didn't think much of it. I imagined someone older, gentle, the kind who'd ask about my studies and smile politely. I was wrong. When she opened the door, the world seemed to slow for half a heartbeat. She had that kind of presence that didn't need to announce itself, calm, self-assured, yet warm enough to make you feel immediately at ease. Her dress wasn't extravagant, just simple and elegant, the kind that moved softly when she walked. Her eyes, clear, intelligent, with a glint of humor, met mine, and something inside me tightened unexpectedly. Dinner was easy at first. The table buzzed with laughter and stories, the kind only old friends and family know how to tell. But as the conversation stretched into the evening, I found my attention wandering, not toward the food, not toward the jokes my friend made, but toward her. The way she listened intently when someone spoke, how her smile seemed to understand more than the words being said. When she laughed, it wasn't loud or forced. It was low, genuine, the kind that makes you forget what you were about to say. And when she poured wine into my glass, her hand brushed my shoulder lightly, so natural I almost believed it was accidental. But then she looked at me, and held the look a little too long. The faint scent of her perfume drifted between us, jasmine and something earthy, something I couldn't name but instantly recognized. It made the room feel smaller, warmer. Every time I caught her glance, something inside me wanted to stay there a bit longer than I should. She asked me about my work, my plans. Her tone was curious, but not nosy. She listened like she genuinely cared, like she saw through my rehearsed confidence. For the first time in a while, I didn't feel like I was performing. I was just me. And that was dangerous. Across the table, my friend laughed at something, unaware of the silent current flowing between us. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was just being polite, intrigued by her maturity, her calm. But the more I watched her, the more I knew it wasn't just intrigue. By the end of the night, the plates were cleared, the candles burned low, and conversation softened into comfortable quiet. I caught her looking at me again, that small, teasing smile tugging at the corner of her lips. The kind that said she noticed the way I looked at her, and maybe she didn't mind. As I said goodnight, her hand brushed mine, brief, deliberate, and gentle enough to leave a spark behind. That was the moment everything shifted. I didn't know what it meant yet, or where it would lead. All I knew was that I was thinking about her long after I left that house, and somehow, I already missed her voice. The house had grown quiet after dinner. My friend had gone to bed early, leaving behind half-empty glasses and the faint smell of roasted herbs in the air. I was about to leave when she appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of tea. "Leaving already?" she asked, her tone light, casual, but her eyes held something softer. I hesitated. Didn't want to overstay. She smiled, that calm, knowing smile that somehow disarmed me every time. "Then stay a few minutes longer. It's just tea." So I did. We sat across from each other at the small kitchen table. The only light came from a low pendant lamp above us, its golden glow painting everything in a kind of quiet stillness. Outside, rain began to whisper against the windows, and for a moment, it felt like the rest of the world had slipped away. She asked about my life, not the surface things people usually ask, but real questions. What do you want to do? What keeps you awake at night? What's something you've never told anyone? I wasn't used to being seen like that, with that kind of honesty. Usually, I had quick answers ready, easy ones to keep things light. But with her, I found myself telling truths I didn't know I'd been carrying. I told her about feeling directionless, about the fear of falling behind, about not knowing who I was supposed to be yet. She listened, really listened. No judgment. No interruptions. Just that steady gaze, her chin resting on one hand as steam curled gently from her mug. "You're too hard on yourself," she said softly. "You don't have to have everything figured out. Life doesn't wait for you to be ready." It just lets you catch up. There was a weight in her voice, like she was speaking from her own scars. I wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her expression told me to let the silence speak instead. The rain picked up. I remember watching a drop slide down the glass, and then her hand brushed mine, only for a second, as she reached for her cup. But it was enough. My breath caught. It wasn't a bold touch, just accidental, maybe. Yet it left warmth lingering in my skin, echoing through my chest. We talked until the clock slipped past midnight. I didn't notice time passing, it just dissolved into the rhythm of her voice. When I finally stood to leave, I thanked her for the tea. She smiled again, that gentle curve of her lips that felt both kind and dangerous. As I stepped toward the door, she said, "Don't overthink it. Some connections just happen." Her words followed me down the street, blending with the sound of the rain. I told myself it was nothing, just a meaningful talk. But deep down, I knew better. Something had begun that night, quietly, beneath the surface, something I couldn't name yet, but couldn't ignore either. A week passed before I saw her again. It wasn't planned. I'd gone to the weekend art fair downtown with a few friends, trying to clear my head. The streets were alive with music and color, the air rich with roasted coffee, rain-damp pavement, and that faint sweetness from nearby flower stalls. I wandered away from my group, drawn by the rhythm of soft jazz spilling from a tent lined with canvases. And there she was. She stood a few feet away, camera in hand, looking at a painting like she was remembering something. Her hair was tied loosely, a few strands falling across her face, catching the afternoon light. She looked different out here, less like someone's aunt, more like a woman who belonged anywhere she wanted to be. When she turned and saw me, her surprise turned into a quiet smile. "You again?" she said, tilting her head. "Guess I'm following good taste." I joked, though my voice came out softer than I intended. We ended up walking together, weaving through rows of art and craft stalls. It felt natural, the way we fell into rhythm, our shoulders almost brushing, our laughter blending with the noise around us. She told me she came here every year, that art had always been her way of staying curious. "People forget to look closely," she said, pausing before a portrait of two figures, a young man and an older woman, their expressions unreadable, full of tension. I looked at the painting, then at her. "What do you think they're feeling?" I asked. She studied it for a long moment. "Drawn to each other," she said finally, "but afraid of what that means." Her voice was steady, but something in it trembled, something unspoken. Our eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world around us faded. The music, the chatter, even the sunlight, everything narrowed to that look. Then she smiled faintly, as if catching herself. "Don't read too much into art," she teased, stepping away. But the moment lingered. I could feel it in the space between us, charged, delicate, alive. We walked a little slower after that, talking about simpler things, favorite artists, childhood memories, books we'd both loved. Yet beneath every word, there was that hum, quiet, magnetic. When my phone buzzed, it was my friend calling, asking where I'd disappeared to. She heard his voice faintly and gave me a look, a playful glimmer mixed with something knowing. "Don't tell your friend you like me better," she said softly, lips curving into a half-smile. It was teasing, but it hid deeper than she knew. I laughed, pretending to brush it off, but inside, her words sank in, not as a joke, but as truth I wasn't ready to admit. When we said goodbye, she adjusted her scarf and gave a small wave, eyes lingering for just a second too long. As she walked away through the crowd, I realized I was still smiling, and that I didn't want the moment to end. That night, her words echoed in my mind, playful, haunting, and impossibly sweet. The messages started as nothing more than casual check-ins. A shared photo of a book cover. A quick joke about the art fair. A comment on a song I'd mentioned once, that she said she couldn't stop listening to. At first, I told myself it was friendly, innocent. But every time her name lit up my screen, a warmth spread through me that I couldn't quite explain away. Her words carried a calm energy, measured, thoughtful, but beneath them was something unspoken, a quiet thread that connected us. She never said too much, yet somehow, she always said just enough. One evening, she texted, "I found that book I told you about. You should come pick it up before I forget again." I didn't even hesitate. When I arrived, the house was softer than I remembered, low lights, faint music drifting from another room. She wore a simple cardigan and jeans, her hair loosely tied back. Comfortable. Unintentionally beautiful. She smiled when she saw me, and for a moment, the world outside ceased to matter. "I didn't think you'd actually come tonight," she said, setting her phone aside. "You invited me," I replied. "I couldn't refuse a good book." She laughed, quiet, genuine, and handed me a cup of coffee. Her fingers brushed mine as I took it, a small, ordinary moment that somehow carried too much meaning. That single touch made my pulse skip, like a reminder of the thin, invisible line we were both pretending not to see. We talked for a while, about the book, about music, about how people rarely listen when they talk to each other. She spoke slowly, her tone soft but steady, and I found myself hanging on every word. "You're easy to talk to," she said after a pause, her voice lower now, eyes fixed on the mug she held. "Most people rush through things. You wait." Her words caught me off guard. "Maybe I'm just trying to keep up with you," I said, and she smiled, but it wasn't the teasing kind this time. It was tender. Vulnerable. The silence that followed was heavy, not uncomfortable, just full. There was so much in that space we didn't dare say aloud. I could feel it, the pull, the hesitation, the fear of what crossing that line might mean. She broke the silence first. "You remind me of someone I used to believe in," she said, almost a whisper. "Someone who saw the good in everything." Her words hung between us like a secret. I didn't know how to respond. All I wanted to do was reach across that small table and take her hand, to let her know that whatever she saw in me, I saw something just as real in her. But I didn't move. Neither did she. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door. We stood there for a second too long, looking at each other like there was something we were both afraid to lose. "Good night," she said softly. "Good night," I echoed, and as I stepped out into the cool night air, I realized the hardest part wasn't leaving her house. It was pretending I hadn't already left a part of myself inside it. "You said the days that followed were quieter, at least on the surface." My friend began to mention her more often, casually at first. "My aunt asked about you," he'd say, laughing. "Guess you made an impression." I tried to play it off, but even hearing her name did something to me, a flicker of warmth, quickly chased by guilt. I told myself I should pull away. But pulling away from her felt like trying to ignore gravity. It wasn't possible. So I went to see her again. I told myself it was about returning her book. She met me at the door with that familiar, steady smile. The house felt different this time, quieter, softer, almost waiting. She wore a loose sweater, her hair down, her expression calm but unreadable. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten about that book," she said. "I tried," I admitted, half smiling. "Didn't work." Her laugh was gentle, but there was something beneath it, a tension neither of us wanted to name. We sat down in the living room, and the conversation began easily enough, small talk, shared stories, quiet laughter. But soon it shifted. She asked if I was okay. Said I'd seemed distant the last time we spoke. I wanted to lie, to say I was fine, but instead I told her the truth. That I thought about her more than I should. That I didn't know what to do with it. She looked down, then back at me. Her eyes were soft, but heavy with something like sadness. "You're not supposed to say that," she murmured, almost to herself. "I know," I said quietly. "But I can't pretend anymore." The room seemed to shrink, the air charged with words we couldn't take back. She sighed, resting her hands on her knees, then turned slightly toward me. "You think this is easy for me?" she asked, her voice trembling just enough to betray her calm. "Do you think I haven't tried to stop feeling what I feel?" That confession landed like a quiet storm. My heartbeat was everywhere, In my throat, my hands, the silence between us. She stood and walked to the window, looking out. People wouldn't understand, she said softly. They'd see something wrong where there isn't. I stepped closer, careful not to touch her. Then we don't have to explain it. She turned, eyes glistening with unshed emotion. It's not that simple. Her voice cracked slightly as she added, You're his friend. And I'm supposed to know better. We stood there, close enough to feel the heat between us, but still separated by that invisible line we kept redrawing. Her hand trembled slightly as she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. We both know what this feels like, she said. But maybe some things are meant to stay unspoken. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The only sound was the soft hum of the air and our uneven breathing. When I finally left, the sky was starting to dim, and I felt hollow, like I'd walked away from something real, something fragile, something I wasn't sure I'd ever find again. That night I couldn't sleep. Her words replayed over and over, meant to stay unspoken, and I wondered if silence was truly safer, or just another kind of heartbreak. Silence has a way of stretching, slowly, quietly, until it becomes something heavier than words ever could. Weeks passed without a message, a call, or a chance meeting. At first, I tried to be strong about it, convincing myself that the distance was necessary, that it was the right thing to do. But the truth was, she had become part of my days in ways I hadn't even noticed until she was gone. I caught myself checking my phone without reason, lingering on old messages, rereading small exchanges about books and songs. I went to the same cafe where she once mentioned the best tea, just to feel a trace of her presence in the mundane. It was ridiculous, I told myself. Yet even the absence of her words felt louder than the noise of the city. My friend mentioned her a few times, casually, said she'd been busy, spending time out of town. I nodded, pretending I didn't care. But part of me wondered if she was avoiding me, or if she was trying to forget the way we'd stood so close that night, both terrified to cross the line we'd drawn together. Then one evening, at a small gathering, I saw her again. She entered quietly, as if she wasn't sure she should be there. My heart stuttered the moment our eyes met. She looked radiant in that unforced way, a calm grace in her movements, her smile polite but reserved. I realized then that she was trying to hold herself together, just as I was. Hey, I said, my voice softer than I intended. She smiled, just enough to be polite. Hey, you. It was strange, standing so close, yet feeling miles apart. Conversations floated around us, laughter, chatter, the clinking of glasses, but they all sounded distant, like echoes from another world. She asked about my work, about my friend. Simple things. Safe things. But her eyes, they told a different story. Every time our gazes met, there was that flicker, longing, regret, understanding, all tangled together. At one point, she placed her hand lightly on my arm while passing by. It was nothing, just a brief touch, but it burned through the thin fabric of my shirt like a memory I wasn't ready to let go of. I'm glad you're doing okay, she said quietly, almost like a question. I'm trying, I replied. You? She hesitated, then smiled, a tired, beautiful smile. Trying too. For a moment, either of us looked away. It was as if we were both silently apologizing, not for what happened, but for what couldn't. As the evening faded, she moved toward the door, coat in hand. Before she left, she touched my arm again, softer this time, her voice breaking just a little. You're doing fine. Keep going. And just like that, she was gone, swallowed by the crowd, by life, by everything that wasn't us. That night, I walked home through the quiet streets, replaying her words in my head. Keep going. It was her way of letting me go, gently, gracefully, the only way she knew how. But even as the city slept around me, I knew that silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of everything we never said. You said, time has a strange way of softening things. The ache that once lived sharp beneath my ribs slowly turned into something gentler, not gone, but quieter. Weeks turned into months, and life moved forward, the way it always does. I poured myself into work, into friends, into trying to forget. But forgetting her wasn't possible. It wasn't that she haunted me, it was that she'd become a quiet part of who I was, a lesson, a feeling, a moment I couldn't rewrite. Then, one gray morning, a small envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name written in handwriting I recognized immediately, graceful, slightly slanted, hers. Inside was a photograph. It was from the art fair, a photo she must have taken that day. The painting of the young man and the older woman stood frozen in time, the same one we'd stood in front of, both pretending it was just art. Tucked behind the photo was a note written on cream paper. For when you forget why you felt something real. That was all it said. I sat there for a long while, holding the photo, tracing the edge of the paper with my thumb. The image blurred slightly as my eyes stung with something between gratitude and longing. It wasn't sadness, not anymore. It was something deeper, something like peace. I realized then that what we had wasn't unfinished, it was simply unspoken. And maybe that's what made it beautiful. Not everything meant to be felt is meant to be kept. Some things exist just to remind you that you're still capable of feeling deeply, of being moved without owning the moment. I placed the photo on my desk, beside a cup of coffee growing cold. Outside, the city moved on, cars passing, people laughing, life continuing. And yet, somewhere between the sound of rain on the window and the faint hum of traffic, I could still hear her voice. Calm, steady, amused. The way she used to say my name. She had once told me not to tell my friend I liked her better. Back then, I thought it was just teasing, a playful whisper meant to stay hidden between us. But now I understood. She wasn't warning me about secrets. She was asking me to protect something fragile, something that could only exist quietly, in memory. Love doesn't always need to end in togetherness. Sometimes it ends in understanding, in the knowledge that two people can find each other at the wrong time, and still walk away with something sacred. As I looked at the photo one last time, I whispered to no one in particular. I never told him. But I think she always knew. Then I smiled, not with regret, but with a quiet kind of acceptance. Because not every love story needs to be lived out loud. Some are meant to stay where they began, in glances, in silences, and in the heartbeats we never confessed. She told me not to tell my friend I liked her better. But some truths don't need to be spoken, they just stay, quietly, in the heart.